Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, some advice. Before you move to a new neighborhood in New York City, take it for a test drive. Every block has its own energy, and the best way to know if it is right for you is to experience it firsthand. Walk the streets at different times of the day. Grab coffee or dinner at a local spot and talk to residents to get the real scoop. Check out social media and see how locals live and what they love or don't love about the area. And don't forget to test your commute and explore everyday conveniences. So before you sign that lease or make an offer to purchase, make sure the neighborhood will work for you and it will feel like home. And on set with me here today are Stephen Gottlieb from Coldwell Banker Warburg. He is the author of an article we're going to talk about today. He writes for U.S. News and World Report. And Christian Rogers from Elegant Real Estate. They join me now to discuss, but first, let me welcome my listeners and viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at stephen@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back. Welcome back. And today's show is going to be an interesting topic. We've been trying to tackle lots of good topics lately, but this one, how to test drive a neighborhood before you actually move there, before you actually sign a lease or make an offer to purchase. Because as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think the topic was 15-minute city. Everybody wants convenience around right outside their door. You know, we used to call it a 5-block radius. And so now maybe it's even less, 4 blocks. I'm not quite sure. But people want conveniences, but they also want to feel comfortable wherever they choose to live. We have the author of this article that we're going to talk about today, How to Test Drive a Neighborhood Before You Even Move There, Stephen Gottlieb from Coldwell Banker. And Stephen, I want to start with you because I read through that article a couple of weeks ago already and thought, wow, that's a great topic for the shows that we have coming up. Tell us a little bit about what drove you to, focus on that aspect of New York City real estate, because you've written many, many real estate articles. But what was it about that topic that interested you?
So first off, Vince, thank you for having me back again. It's always a pleasure to be here. So for starters, I am running out of ideas left and right for U.S. News and World Report. It's getting tough to think of things. However, I was working with this really lovely couple, and they lived in Chelsea, and they were ready to move, but they didn't know where, and they were curious about what life would be like in Brooklyn. And we started to look at a few properties, mostly in, Cobble Hill and that area. And they thought it would be a good idea to do an Airbnb for a long weekend. And they tested out the commute. For example, the wife had a commute into Manhattan. And they, wanted to have a weekend there and a couple weekdays there. And I had never heard of anybody actually doing this in their own city. And I thought that this was sort of brilliant and interesting. And after their commute, they actually decided that this wasn't for them. And they ended up buying on the Upper West Side. However, I thought that this was sort of the seed of what could be a really interesting topic.
It's interesting because I never thought of that concept. Taking an Airbnb, especially for those people moving into
New York. In your own city, right.
Right. Take an Airbnb for a long weekend. test drive the neighborhood. I mean, I would never even think that. What I think, and we'll talk about it as we go along, is walk around and test different things. Christian, what are your thoughts on, you're very successful in this industry. You've worked with many, many clients, all different levels of purchases. What do you think about testing a neighborhood first? And what should people test when they go to a neighborhood, when they don't know if they're coming into the city for the first time? Or as I indicated before we went on air, I started out in New York City living on the east side, and I was kind of talked into moving to the west side by my broker at the time. I was not in real estate, and I kind of went kicking and screaming saying, I don't know anything about the west side, and I don't really want to know anything about the west side. I like living where I live. How are people making decisions today?
In Italian, we say you make decisions with your stomach. So for me, you go eat somewhere. I mean, it's fundamental. But if you,
I can relate.
All kidding aside, it's really, if you look at how neighborhoods have evolved, it has everything to do with what kind of restaurants are there, what kind of coffee shops are there. So it's really, I think when I took a sabbatical from New York City once and moved all the way, believe it or not, to Jersey City. What convinced me to do this? I met my friend for a brunch, and the place had Prosecco and a certain dish that I liked, and I was like, that's it, I can do this. But yeah, all kidding aside, I mean, if you're moving from outside of New York City, I think people come and move for different reasons, right? Some are moving for work, some are moving because they want to have a part of their life here. So in the end of the day, I think it starts with what's the fabric of the neighborhood? Does it resonate with you? Test driving like an Airbnb. I mean, we did a version of that when we looked to purchase outside of the city, and I think there's something about that. The idea that you could maybe rent for a time and then move to purchase is absolutely fundamental.
Oh, exactly. I mean, renting is not a full-time commitment or a permanent commitment.
That's right.
And that's one of the reasons why people rent anyway, just because they don't want to get themselves involved in anything permanent. But Stephen, we talk about all kinds of different people moving into the city for all different reasons: work, school. They just want to be here, have to be here. I remember when I was younger, my only thought was, and I'm writing a book, I keep saying that the last couple of weeks, my only thought was, I want to live in New York City where there's excitement, where there are things that are different from the suburban, local little town that I grew up in. It's exciting, lights are flashing, and people are moving all over the place. How much of that, though, goes into the equation when people say, all right, I made the decision, I'm going to leave, wherever, and I'm going to go into New York City? Is it Brooklyn? Is it Queens? Is it Manhattan? What goes into that equation when people decide and say, okay, now I'm doing it, now I'm moving, and let's go?
All right, forgive me if I'm misinterpreting what you just said, but it sounds to me like when you were having those conversations with yourself, you were almost saying, this is what I want my life to look like. This is the person that I want to be.
100%.
And when I'm working with certain clients, and this is sort of interesting because it's particularly young parents, honestly, a lot of the time they will walk into properties and they are very focused on their life right now, having little kids. And it's hard for them to project what life will be like when they have children or even teenagers. And I'm often pushing them to say, your children are only going to be toddlers or babies or whatever for a short period of time. You need to look at this property. How is your life going to look in 6 or 7 years? Because it's going to look different than it does today. And this property, this apartment might not be perfect for life with a baby, but it's going to be great for life with a 6-year-old. And that is part of an aspirational view towards the next property. And in terms of neighborhoods, which I think you were also getting at, when you're walking around, do these people look like the people that you see yourself as becoming? If you're making a big caterpillar into butterfly transformation, if you're theoretically moving to New York from somewhere else, for example.
It's like when I work with first-time buyers who are either coming into the city for the first time or have been here and want to go off and buy somewhere on their own. And they kind of say, oh, I want to live on the Upper East Side because that's where all my friends are. And I can honestly say my first place to live was the East Side because that's where I had friends who lived there. But I also tell first-time buyers, whether it's a studio or a one-bedroom, this isn't going to be a permanent home, okay?
Right.
You're not going to stay here forever. So when you are talking to first-time buyers and they dig in and say, no, I have to have this, 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 and this, and yeah, I may not stay here forever, but I'm going to be here for a long time. What do you say to these people?
Real estate is completely emotional. I mean, we're dealing with, Stephen was saying, people's lives and where they think they are and how and who they think they are in that moment. And we've been through enough transactions and we've seen enough cycles of people's lives evolving. I think it's sort of our responsibility to put it out there and say, hey, I know you think this is the forever home, but I know we'll be talking in 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
And when you choose a neighborhood, though, when we say to them, understand, think about what you want, right? Think about what makes you happy, after work, because, of course, in New York City, everybody's always so busy. I talk about that every week. We're all so busy running around, working, doing whatever. But we also have our downtime after work, on weekends when we want to visit friends and go out and do things. How important does that become when people are choosing a neighborhood? And when you say walk around and test drive a neighborhood, what are they looking for? Or what should they be looking for?
I mean, we've touched upon a lot of the different things that they should be looking for. New York is a food city. Are there restaurants in the neighborhood that you want to eat at that is the type of food that you like? And then, I think about myself. I live near Union Square. And when I first moved to that neighborhood, my sister was 1 block away and I had friends in every direction within 2 blocks. I'm there a number of years now. My sister has moved to the Upper East Side. One of those friends has moved to Brooklyn. Another one of those friends has moved to Tribeca. And although my friends are now scattered all over the city, Union Square is a wonderful place for transportation. It's a major, major subway hub. So, as a broker, that's great. But also socially, I can get anywhere really, really easily, and people can get to me. So that has proven, transportation is a really big, important thing, especially in New York City as well.
Transportation is a very big thing. And when I first moved into the city 30 years ago, transportation was not what it is today, especially when I was living on the Upper East Side. But when we say things like talk to locals, walk around, but talk to locals, you kind of decide what you're looking for. You kind of decide where you think you want to be. What about this concept of talking to people, the merchants, the wine store guys and gals and the grocery store, whatever, and talking to people on the street? Do you see much of that happening? Do you advise your clients to do that? Or is it something that kind of organically happens? Well, I want to live here and I don't really know much about the neighborhood, so maybe I should talk to people in the neighborhood. I didn't do that. I wasn't even thinking about doing that. Is that important?
I think to some extent, but I think your prior point is even more important in the sense that, everyone's so busy nowadays. We were just talking about, no one has time even to come on and do a showing or see an apartment. Right. I think fundamentally, you've got to, particularly because different neighborhoods change throughout the day and throughout the week. So there's some neighborhoods that are a certain way during the week, but on the weekends, it's full of people from, coming into the city, and maybe it's more active than you actually. I lived in the West Village for 20 years, and the village as a whole has evolved, right? A Saturday today in the village, a Sunday today in the West Village is completely different from what it was 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So I think that's really important. Also after hours, like when you come home, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like you're in the thick of it, in the mix of it? Or do you want to feel like, oh, you know what? I got my buzz for the day. I want to sort of chill out. Then meeting the baker or the butcher or, for as much as those still remain. And in the village they do, which is kind of nice.
Yes, it does.
Those things are important, but I think they're kind of organic and they're the nice part of discovering a neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm living in my neighborhood, my new neighborhood, as I call it, 21 years, okay? And for me, that's the longest I've ever lived anywhere, including in my parents' house. So for me, it's like an unbelievable, realization. But as you just said, when I walk around my neighborhood, I talk to the guy in the wine store. I talk to my local bodega people. I talk to the dry cleaner on the corner. I go across the street to this little luncheonette where I buy fresh pizza dough because I like to make my own pizza, whatever. And they all know me by name, and they all know that I've been there forever. And I'm part of the fabric of that neighborhood. And Stephen, what I wanted to ask you about is, I think one of you said it before we went on air here, that the neighborhoods in this town really kind of change like every 4 blocks, right? So what does that really mean when we think we're settling into a place where we want to be because it meets all our needs, it has what we want, we're recognized, but then you go 4, maybe 5 blocks away, and it's completely different. We can talk about the boroughs being different. That's another conversation. But explain a little bit about, that 4-block change of neighborhood.
So I was talking about my dad, actually, who
Right.
has lived in Manhattan since he moved here from the suburbs in, I guess, the 70s. And he says that in Manhattan, it's a new neighborhood every 4 blocks. And I don't think he's wrong.
No, I agree with him.
I think that, every 4 blocks, you have a new supermarket, you have a new coffee shop, you have a new, all the cafes change, and it's a different group of locals who are patronizing each of these establishments. And there's a different fabric in each of these little enclaves. Interestingly, though, and this speaks to Manhattan in particular, I had a broker colleague from Miami call me up because they wanted to target certain zip codes for a particularly wealthy clientele who might want to buy in Florida. And she was asking me, like, well, which zip codes should we be targeting? And I said, well, that's not how New York works. Yeah. In Miami, maybe you have zoning rules that the lot sizes have to be so big, or there's rules about what you can do on your properties, and thus it attracts a certain price point or whatever. But in New York, I mean, you can have a walk-up that's next to a major Park Avenue co-op, next to a post-war condo, next to a new development, and they're all sharing one square block, and it's a completely different price point, completely different ownership style.
Which brings different people.
Yeah. And that speaks to the diversity of the socioeconomic diversity that we all live in Manhattan when we're all living on top of each other.
Very true. Christian, you sell townhomes as we all do. Is there a difference, though, when people are buying or looking at townhomes? Are they really concerned about the neighborhood around them, or what's within that 4 blocks or that 15-minute city aspect? Or do they kind of cop the attitude, well, it's like living in a house in the suburbs. When I close my door, I'm in my home, and I probably have enough money where I can have things sent in. I don't necessarily have to go out. Do you perceive a difference there at all, or no?
Not really. I mean, with townhouses particularly, it gets very, very granular, right? It gets like, who is my neighbor? What's the neighboring building? Right. What's in front of me? What's behind me? Am I getting, what exposure does my garden have? Do I feel like I'm breathing on the block? And it gets really granular, like down to the block. What's at the end of the block? Is there a subway station? Is there not? So it really depends. But I think in the end of the day, it's sometimes there's this intangible, right? It just feels good. It feels right. And that's the best moment in real estate for us, I think, is like when you see someone's eyes light up, something they weren't even expecting, and it's just like, okay, this is great. The other thing, without trying to be self-serving, if you can work with someone who really knows that neighborhood so well that they can give you enough information. Sometimes you don't want all the information, right? It's like you just want to know, like, hey, where can I do this? Where can I do that? What's your suggestion for? And then let them experience a little bit. And I think that's...
No, I agree. All right, we've got to take a quick break. We're coming right back. More on this, how to test drive a neighborhood before either buying or renting, and what the benefits are once you're there. This is Talking New York Real Estate. We're just getting started on a very busy Tuesday morning. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
Residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
Okay, guys, we're back. So we talked a little bit about transportation. before break. And I remember, when I came into the city, transportation was everything. So I was living on the Upper East Side, where transportation in those days was not great. Since we've had the Second Avenue subway or the Q line, whatever, that's added another line to a very congested, 4, 5, 6 line. So it's made transportation better.
And it's changed the real estate majorly in that corridor.
And it's increased the prices of real estate and changed it completely. And the activity over there became greater than it was for years. I moved. One of the reasons I was convinced to move to the West Side is because the transportation was great. I was working downtown on Wall Street at the time. I was right there, 2 blocks away from the 1, the 2, the 3. It was beautiful. So my question is, now transportation is better all over. But then since we've had Uber and Lyft and this new company Empower and on, Curbed, are people focused on transportation, meaning the traditional train systems? Or when they're looking to evaluate a neighborhood or test drive a neighborhood, do they just say to themselves, well, it doesn't matter where I live because I can get in an Uber or I can get in a Lyft car and I can go anywhere. And in my neighborhood, in the morning sometimes when I see these little kids, standing on the corner getting into Uber cars and Lyft cars because they're going to take them to school, I'm thinking, wow, has the world changed? I mean, I know we have lots of money in this town, but my goodness, really?
It's changed.
It's changed, but 100%. Is transportation a real big issue these days, or is it not?
I mean, obviously, it depends. I think, one of the key things, again, in certain neighborhoods, parking. Because a lot of people at many of the price points.
I got rid of my car. I can't deal with parking in this town.
Because it costs like it costs like renting an apartment, right? But at a certain phase and style of life, people have their car because they go out of the city on the weekends, et cetera, et cetera. So, can I park on the street? Really what they're looking for is garages. Is there a garage in the building, next to the building, near my townhouse?
Yeah, but even if there is a garage in the building, there's often a wait list that's years long. So it's tremendous, irrelevant.
But these all become part of the conversation. Yeah. Oh, if there's a wait list, I don't want to look at the apartment kind of thing. So I think that's definitely become central. I think the idea that you can get quickly, and again, it depends on the buyer. Do I want to live downtown, but I'm working in Midtown? Or some people will be, I want to live downtown, walkable to the financial district, or walkable to certain offices in Tribeca, let's say. So there's a little bit of what it is.
Yeah, I'm always in a hurry. Okay, and not because I have to be someplace at a particular time. I credit myself as always being on time or early. It's just my nature. But when I say I'm always in a hurry, if I'm taking a car service or I'm taking a yellow taxi, whatever, I don't want to sit in traffic.
Right.
My hair starts to curl. Right. My eyelashes want to fall out. I get hostile. I don't say anything, but I get hostile, and it's like I can't deal with this. I can't deal with that.
It's the worst.
It's the worst. And traffic in this town has gotten so bad in the last couple of years. I mean, really, really bad, when it's supposed to be getting better because of things that have been going on.
Congestion.
Correct. Nonsense is what I say.
I'm a subway guy. I
am too.
So much easier.
I am too. But again, does this make a difference when people are test driving a neighborhood? Am I walking to the train, which was a big to-do for me when I went to the West Side? I have to walk to the train and 1 or 2 blocks, or I'm not interested. Today, I don't think people care about that. But yet they'll complain like Vince Rocco does about sitting in the back of a car saying, what's going on here? This is cuckoo. But they'll do it, right?
I think it really depends on it depends so much because every client is different and everybody who looks for a place to live is different. I think that transportation is still relevant to where your daily life is, whether it's school or
your daily routine.
Work, right? I mean, for example, I'm working with these people and they are looking in Brooklyn, but the wife is doing something at Columbia University right now. So that commute is very much on their mind. However, I was just thinking about this, and and this is only my experience as a broker. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have different experiences than this. But in my own microcosm, I was just thinking about how in years past, the walk to work and the ability to walk to work was something that I heard about all the time as a broker. And I don't hear about that nearly as much now. I don't know if other brokers find the difference.
But tell me why.
I think that's pandemic related, frankly.
I moved here 30 years ago, and I only had one experience where I could walk to work, and it was only for a year. I was living in a co-op in the mid-40s, East 40s, and I was 2 blocks away from my office. And I thought it was heaven. But then I said, this is a little too close for comfort. I don't want to be in my off hours right outside my office door or seeing people, from my corporate life walking around my streets. And I lived on a very pretty street on East 44th Street by the UN. I only had that once in my life, but is it still something people want to aspire to? I mean, at this point in my career,
it's a phase
would I
of
like
life
to
thing,
walk
yeah.
to my office? Maybe. Do I need to have that? I don't know.
But I just think that since the pandemic, remote work
that's
has
changed
become
everything.
such a major aspect of daily life. I mean, a lot of people are only in the office a couple of days a week.
Well, I was going to get to that, expand on that, because now we don't necessarily, in our search for neighborhoods, we're not necessarily looking for convenience to work, because a lot of people are still working from home, even in our industry in real estate. So how has that affected things?
I think that, look, again, I live in Union Square. Transportation is important to me because I have to get anywhere quickly.
Well, you've got it all there.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm finding that my clients, they're more and more working remotely all the time, or at least some of the time, and the ability to walk to the office, even if it's a long walk, is just coming up less.
I teach real estate as well, as I continually mention on this program. And one of the things when we're talking about buyers, I've always said for years, because it was ingrained in my head when I first became a real estate agent, buyers don't know what they want. Buyers tell you they want this, they want that. They really don't know what they want. So in line with this conversation today, when we're talking about test driving neighborhoods and understanding where you're living and how it maps to your lifestyle, when a buyer comes to you, mostly first-time buyer, who doesn't really know anything about what they want. They don't really know the housing supply. They don't know what's available, what's not available, price points, whatever, but I have to buy. How do they make that final decision? All right, this neighborhood is for me, or this neighborhood is not for me. I mean, the young folk today, for a while now, were running out to Brooklyn, right? Williamsburg and all those wonderful places in Brooklyn, Long Island City. First because it was cheaper. Now it's not as cheap as it was, and probably in some cases more expensive. When you get a first-time buyer who doesn't know anything and doesn't really express any interest in knowing anything, I just want to buy an apartment and I want it to be cheap and fit into my budget. How do we work with these people?
I think that there's that adage that a lot of real estate agents repeat, which is buyers are liars.
I didn't want to say that, but you can say that. That's fine.
I wanted
That's
to
exactly
say,
right.
I want to say that I don't think that's true. And I think buyers come in knowing what they want, and they really do know what they want. But the process of looking for real estate helps them to learn about themselves. And because during that looking process, they have to see a lot of stuff that's not right. And during that process, there's a lot of self-assessment that is going on. They're learning about the market, but they're also learning about themselves. And they're trying to figure out, gee, this thing that I thought was so important to me, it's not actually. I can live without that. Or wow, this thing I didn't even think of is actually really important to me. So it's not that they don't understand or they don't know or that they're lying. It's that they're still figuring it out, and that process is helping them to reprioritize or move the priorities in different order.
And don't you think that it is really our responsibility as mentors or coaches or teachers, right? I love that aspect of what you just said, Stephen, because I like it when somebody says, but you know what, Vince, I don't really necessarily know, or I could use your advice on this neighborhood or that neighborhood. I'm very happy to do that. I don't mind showing different neighborhoods to one buyer until they decide, okay, this works for me, or this is going to work for me, or I can see where, this suits or fits my needs. Because again, I sometimes feel, based on what you talk about in your article, I sometimes feel like I have to encourage buyers, again, first time mostly, to understand what they should be looking for in a neighborhood that's going to suit their needs, because I don't think sometimes they're even aware of that. Maybe a second-time buyer, buyers with families, have a different set of priorities. First-time early buyers, they they don't really know.
So how many years are you doing this?
23.
Vince? And
2020.
so I'm the rookie here. I'm doing this only 13 years. But one of the things that I wrote about in the article is that your real estate agent is your tour guide.
Correct.
And that's, and if you're working with somebody who's
And
been
your mentor.
Yeah, in many ways. And if you're working with somebody who's been doing this a long enough time, and you mentioned working with somebody who's a specialist in that neighborhood or in that property type, that the real estate agent is somebody who should be able to not only talk to you about local law 11 and co-op boards, but also be able to talk to you about what goes on here in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. I mean, when I'm walking around with buyers, I don't. It just comes so naturally because I've been doing this so long. I become like this bizarre trivia fountain.
No.
Where I'm that's where that happened. They filmed this over here.
I can
blah,
relate
blah, blah.
to that, right?
So,
And people like that. People want to hear
I
that.
hope so.
They absolutely they love that.
But Christian, when I first started, 23 years ago, whatever, and for many, many years, when you were working with buyers at any price point, I want a river view, I want a park view, I want to walk to the park, I want to I want to do this, I want to do that. Has this new 15-minute kind of city thought, or really looking for that 4-block radius where I can call this my hood and be comfortable, has that taken over for the need for a park view or a river view? I mean, I remember saying the same thing. I used to tell my agent, I want a park view. And she'd be like, Vince, you can't afford a park view.
Right.
I want a river view. Vince, you can't afford a river view. Okay. Now I have a river view because I wanted it, but that's 21 years ago. Has that changed at all, or?
I don't know if it's changed necessarily in the sense that, it's always been a process, right? Everyone always comes in with the emotional, I want. And then we get down to the practical and the possible. So there's the I want, and then there's what's possible. And it's a process. And I think our responsibility is to let and kind of hold people's hand through that process and let them discover for themselves, hey, you know what? I thought this was important, or we thought we could do this, but in fact, what we're seeing is we've got to change a little bit what our priorities are, what we're really looking for.
I talked a little bit in the opening about how social media, not that we're going to, choose necessarily an apartment based on what social media says. However, a lot of us, realtors, in this town post a lot of, real estate stuff. We talk about neighborhoods. We show beautiful apartments or whatever on social media. How important do you think social media is, Stephen, in people deciding on where they want to live and deciding on the conveniences and the neighborhood perks that they need? Or is it just something, like another picture, whatever, on social media? I can look at pictures, I could look at this, I could read that, but does it really
I think maybe
persuade
both.
me?
I think it's both. I think, one aspect of social media is that it's a fantasy, and a lot of it is
Better said. Thank you.
aspirational. And everybody's posting their greatest hits of the week or whatever. However, if somebody is really in love with their neighborhood, even if they don't even know it themselves, they're probably going to be posting pictures of them and their family or their friends in all of the local haunts or the park that they like to go to. And if you sort of are thinking about that neighborhood anyway, you'll be able to see, this is arguably the best burger in this neighborhood, or this is arguably the best place to have a Sunday picnic in this neighborhood. So in that respect, I do think it can be relevant, maybe more as a springboard, maybe more as a jumping off point, and less as a truth telling thing. But I do think it is somewhat relevant.
I mean, social media really is and can be across the board, not just for real estate, a whole can of worms. I mean, there's so many things that, people post on all the platforms, including TikTok these days. And I often wonder, or even based on what you just said, I often wonder how much information people are really culling from what they see on social media, because it can be all over the place.
It can get you in trouble, though.
It can get you in trouble is really what I'm leading to.
One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking about taking out buyers is when I first started in the business, I was working with this woman, and early in our time together, she said, "Why are you arguing with me so much? Why are you contradicting me so much?" And I took a step back and I thought, am I arguing with her? What am I doing? I don't want to be difficult for a client. And then I thought about it some more and I said, actually, it's my job to play devil's advocate here. I have to do that. So now, and she ended up, it was great. She bought something in Chelsea, blah, 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 blah. But now when I take buyers out, within the first day or two, I say to them, it is my job to play devil's advocate. If I take you to see a property that isn't right for you, I have to be able to tell you why we went to see it. It might be in order to make the property that I think you should buy look that much better because you've seen something that is wrong but has all the things you thought you wanted. And then if you find something that you want, part of my job is to point out all the flaws with it because you need to know what you're getting into. And if all of those flaws are things that you don't mind or that you can get over, that's probably the one. So that I think that it is our job, not just as tour guides, as we said earlier, but a little bit to play devil's advocate. And it's about neighborhoods as well as the space, as well as the architecture and all that stuff.
Well, 100%. But I think, social media, as you say, could be a trap if you don't do additional research to find out what is available in a particular neighborhood. As we said before, walk the neighborhood, talk to some of the local people, visit the merchants to understand, what exists in this 4 or 5 block radius. You have to do your research. But have there ever been, situations where people have fallen in love with the neighborhood online, but when they go to it, they're very disappointed? I had that actually. That actually happen to me recently. A buyer came to see one of my listings and said, "Oh, this is not how." And fortunately, he wasn't referring to my online whatever. He said, "This is not how I perceive this neighborhood based on what I've seen online." And so, of course, I asked, "Well, what did you see?" And blah blah blah, whatever. He said, "This is not really nice." So there's that side of it too, right? You can fall in love with something because you see it in pictures, or you could read a beautiful story about an apartment or a neighborhood or whatever, and then all of a sudden you show up and the neighborhood's changed. And that's the other thing I wanted to ask too. In all the years that I'm doing, real estate, and probably a lot since COVID, we keep talking about post-COVID, neighborhoods have changed through the years.
100%.
And what people have originally thought about specific neighborhoods are not the same. So, I think people get disappointed when they start a search and think, oh, well, the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side or downtown or wherever is this special, wonderful place. And then they go and they say, well, not really
or
anymore.
certain sections of that neighborhood. And then the section of the neighborhood that they can afford, unfortunately, might not exactly
the dream of the neighborhood.
And then people say to me, well, why do the prices go up in certain neighborhoods? The West Village you mentioned before, one of my favorite neighborhoods in all of New York City and all the boroughs is the West Village. I love, love, love. But when you look at some of the Tribeca, you look at some of these neighborhoods where prices through the years have just escalated to the point where it's not even believable. But yet people say, I like it, and I can't. I heard this recently too. I like it enough. I would love to live there, but I can't. So help me find a comparable neighborhood to West Village anywhere else in New York City. And then you sit back as a realtor and scratch your head and say, well, yes, I could work with you and find something. But when you want it to be comparable to the West Village,
that's always a tough one, right? I mean, I think the best, what we tend to get a lot of is, I'd like to be close to nowadays, right? It's like, so depending on the neighborhood you're talking about, if you can find a pocket that kind of gives you, because what is it that's resonating with them about that neighborhood? Is it because their friends live there? Is it because they have this idea of what it's like? Or is it because, look, we go to XYZ restaurant every Sunday, we're in a phase of our life where it's just us. We want to be able to come in, enjoy ourselves, or, hang out in the neighborhood. Maybe we don't actually have to be in that, 4-block radius. Maybe we can be close enough, and actually that lets us do something else. So it's this whole process of exploring. I mean, that's really, and playing devil's advocate is super important.
Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be neutral. But what are some of the red flags, Stephen, that people find in potential neighborhoods that they thought they liked or loved or wanted to be involved in or live in, but then all of a sudden, red flag?
One of the things that we talked about before we went on air was the difference between moving from outside New York to New York, or moving from outside a city into a new city versus moving across town. I think that people who move cross town probably have a better idea of what they're getting into because maybe they have friends who live in this new neighborhood. And I think when you're moving to a new city, hopefully you know people there who can give you some help. We talked about renting versus buying. I think that you don't always know what those problems that are going to arise might be, and that's why renting at first might be the move. And then buying later once you're really sure of not only the neighborhood, but where exactly in the neighborhood you think you want to be.
Right. Again, it's not a permanent move.
Right.
You can get out of a rental easier than you can, get out of a sale because you got to sell it and whatever. All right, we're going to take another break. One more block coming up. We're going to wrap this up. Great conversation about test driving neighborhoods on your way to buying or renting. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Dylan Pachulik, CEO of XL Real Property Management, New York's most trusted name in luxury property management since 2012. We specialize in managing individual apartments, townhouses, and rental buildings held by absentee owners. We maintain our properties with the highest standards of quality and service so that owners can choose a hassle-free approach to real estate investing. Rented or owner-occupied, we handle it all. For more information, contact us at xl-rpm.com.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So we talked about a lot of things, but one of the things Stephen just brought up during the break here is there is really a difference between daytime living, nighttime living, weekend living in our homes. And I think that's very big when people are trying to decide what they want to do in their off hours. Daytime, for the most part, if you're not working from home, you're going to an office. But after hours, you want to meet friends, you want to go for a beer, you want to go for a cocktail, you want to have dinner. On weekends, you might be entertaining friends or meeting friends out. Tell us a little bit about how that plays into people's decisions, because as I say, they're very great differences. I think during the time of day, whatever.
I think picking where you want to live is a big life decision. And therefore, what seems great during the day, it might be completely different at night. And I think you do need to not case the joint, but you do have to walk the block different times of day, different times of week to see what it's like. There is a very real world in which you are living above a charming cafe or something during the day, and then, at 2 o'clock in the morning every Saturday night, the crowd spills out onto the street, and I can't sleep because it's so noisy. That's not
true facts.
Yeah, that happens. So, I mean, for example, I'm looking right now with this family moving from outside the city, and we're still new in the search, but I've said to them, you should walk around this area at night and make sure you understand what it is during the day versus what it is at night. I mean, the city takes on very different characteristics, different time of day, different time of week. We were just talking about, certain areas of Soho. It's like a zoo on the weekend during the day.
It's like the worst,
and then
last
desolate.
place I want to be on the weekend.
Desolate.
I love Soho, but on the
8 p.m.
weekend,
on a Tuesday.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, it's true. And you mentioned something about a fire truck, fire station, excuse me. I mean, I've been in neighborhoods where I'm showing listings, and right in the middle of an open house on Sunday, the screaming, fire truck comes bolting out of the doors, and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Really? Like right now?
I mean, it's one, actually, when a client will send you, I think we're interested in this building or this street. I do. Google 3D is saved so much hassle. Mm-hmm. And if it's not a block I know specifically, I'll say, guys, before we go, just know that that's there or something else is there. But you've got to go feel it out, or how close are you to the entrance of the tunnel and all this kind of stuff.
Or I've said to clients, please, stand by the window and wait for a bus to go by. Wait for a truck to go by. Right. Can you hear it? Chances are you can a little, if not a lot. Are you okay with this? Yeah. I can tell you, I'm a city kid. I grew up in the city. I'm not that sensitive to noise, but I'm very aware that many of my clients are. And
oh my God, but way too sensitive.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
I do and I don't.
White
Silence
noise.
is
White
deafening.
noise.
I do and I don't.
Oh my God!
It's like
When you
when
go
I-
to the country and the crickets, it's that's
When I go to the country on the
that's
weekend to
noise.
visit my family and it's quiet and I hear crickets, I'm like,
You get
what
nervous.
is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, stop
The
making that
sounds of
noise,
nature are
right?
So
Yes.
loud.
It's so loud. Exactly. Or the birds chirping in the trees. I'm like, okay, well that you see in the movies. I don't see that in New York City. Very loud.
It's real.
Okay, it's real. But then I come here and the screaming fire truck goes zipping by my apartment. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm home. Back to New York City. But people I think about fair housing when I talk about a lot of this stuff, because when I'm teaching fair housing, and as we all know, there are things we can say and there are things we can't say based on the Department of State in New York and our fair housing rules. And, oftentimes people say to me, Vince, I love the building, I love the apartment, but who lives here? What type of people live here? I love it when they say, what kind of people live here? And I'm like, kind of people? I mean, okay. So we can't answer. And what we generally say is, what I say is, I really can't give you an answer to that because of our fair housing rules, but I do suggest that you walk the neighborhood or you stand outside any time of the day, any time of the afternoon, any time of the night, and see who's coming and going in the building, and that will give you a definite sense of who lives here.
I think you can also look at what type of building this is. Is this a building that consists of mostly studio apartments, or is this a building that consists of mostly 3-bedroom apartments?
Well, even if it's a combination, are there any? I get this in one building I work in all the time. Are there any children who live here? Are there parents who live here, or is it just single people? I can't answer that question, but again, if you want to stand outside, but you're right. I mean, if it's 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, they're probably going to be children. If there's studios and 1 beds, they're probably people starting out in their life in New York City, and maybe not. But some people don't think that clearly, and they'll ask the question, and I'd be like, well, okay, so just stand outside. I use the term before you and your article, test drive the neighborhood, go out there and look at it and see what it's all about. You may love it. You may love the apartment, but the neighborhood may not work for you. So what would you call or what piece of advice would you give somebody in looking for that perfect fit? We all know, based on everything in New York, you're talking about price, you're talking about neighborhood, you're talking about, room count, you're talking about pre-war versus post-war, you're talking about convenience, you're talking about that 15-minute city. What's the perfect fit?
There's no such thing.
Well, there isn't, but, you kind of get to know your client a little bit, and you kind of can put a little bit together about what they represent, what they're looking for, what they should have. How do you approach that subject was going to be my question.
For me, the most insightful experience was buying my own property. I was my own worst, physician, if you like. And the interesting thing is the broker because I worked with a broker because he had some specific knowledge that I knew I didn't have. So, and this is outside of the city, but it applies anyway. He let us work through our wish list, work through our dream, and then just gave us, okay, how about this? And it was the how about this that was just
I had the same experience.
As perfect as it could have, it ended up being. It didn't perfectly match, everything we'd laid out, but it was instant.
You let people go through their mishigas, okay, until you sit back and say, hey, let me give you my thoughts on something. Let me tell you because when I work with buyers, I think they like it because I let them go and I let them do and I let them tell me what they want and we'll go and see and blah, blah, blah. And then I like the education process behind working with buyers where I'll finally say, as you just indicated, Christian, okay, let me give you my 2 cents or let me give you my input or let me kind of, hone in on what we've seen so far and kind of maybe bring it home for you. And most of the time it works. Sometimes you get that stickler who says, well, maybe a few more.
You may not even have been thinking about this because you're so focused over here. Give me an hour of your time and let's go and do or see this. Right. And sometimes it's that, oh my gosh, we never, you were Upper East Side,
Upper East, yeah.
Ended up on the Upper West or,
And I was digging in saying, no. Right. I was working with a broker too. I'm like, no, that's not where I want to be. It's not my lifestyle, whatever I was telling her that in those days. And she was right. Yeah. And here I am all these years later.
I think a lot of the time we as agents have to say stuff that sounds obvious and the buyer hasn't necessarily actually said those words to themselves. I've said to people, I'm like, a lot of what I'm going to say sounds so basic, but hearing me say it may help something crystallize for you. One of the things that I often talk about with buyers when we go out is you need to focus on what you can change and what you can't change. You can't change the location of the building. You can't change the ceiling height. The plumbing risers are basically where they are. You can change this
I'm
seller's...
laughing because he's 100% correct.
You can change this seller's awful taste. All of their furniture's leaving
That's
with
cosmetic,
them.
right.
You know, you can change a backsplash. There's things you can change, and it's important not to get hung up on the stuff that can be changed and not to fall in love with the stuff that is going to change. And that can often, it's so obvious, but I think a lot of buyers don't necessarily think of it that way.
You know, it's so funny when you said that, and I started laughing because it's so true, and I'm sure we've all heard the same thing. Oh, Vince, I love this building. I love this apartment. I just wish it were 2 blocks there. And I would say the same thing. Well,
it would
it's
be
not.
3x more expensive.
Right. But it's not going to be 2 blocks away, okay? Just is what it is. I want to be I want to be west of 3rd. Oh, why can't it be just 2 blocks away? You pay $1 million more for it, okay? But those are just the simple things. But what I like to tell people, you know, younger agents, is what you guys are saying is 100% correct. But I like to, when I start with a buyer, I will sit down with them if I have the opportunity, and I kind of enforce it and say, okay, let's have a conversation. Before we start running around looking at this or that and 10 apartments and whatever else, let's prepare. Give me a list of what you want.
Yeah, your wish list.
Your wish list.
Exactly.
And we'll talk about what's reality, okay? And we'll talk about what we might find out there, what is available out there, because we know the inventory better than they do for the most part. And I find that works better. You still have to tweak it as you go along, but I find that it does work better when you kind of set the stage with them, talk about the neighborhood, talk about what you're looking for in a neighborhood. Do you need everything to be 15 minutes around you? What about if they're, you know, parents with children? You know, are you going to be attracted more to a particular school versus another school? And when you write this wish list down, I think they get a better sense, because then they go home and think about it and then wait for my email that says, okay, our first tour is going to be this day, and here's what we're going to see. And I think it's better received, or more, you know, well received, versus just running out there. I mean, how many times, I got a buyer, and you run out there and you show 15 apartments in 2 weeks, and none of them work.
But I think there's 2 things that we've already touched upon that I think play into what you're just saying. Number one is buyers make a must-have list and a I would like to have list, and that starts to evolve as they're seeing properties, and they realize maybe I don't need this as badly as I thought, and maybe, oh, this thing I would like to have, I actually need. That's one thing, and then the other aspect is just us playing devil's advocate again, and I do think that a good broker will often throw in a dark horse property and say, I know this is a little outside of what you said you wanted, but do me a solid. Just take a look at this. I think you'll find it interesting.
Right.
And that's sometimes the one they buy.
I like to encourage.
I was going to say, and sometimes that's the one that they end up with, and I've been the same way, same experience.
I like to encourage buyers, particularly, to send me what's resonating with them, stylistically, neighborhood, you know, apartment-wise.
Correct.
And then most often, out of their list, it actually gives us an opportunity to kind of showcase our value, because say, hey, I get why you like that apartment, but you should know that this building, this line, that block, you know, that piece of the neighborhood, whatever it is, there's a bunch of information they just simply won't know. Many years ago,
they won't know.
When these platforms came out that were client-facing, public-facing, there was a huge transition in the industry where we went from being the holders of information to the people giving the context around the information. And that's where our expertise is now. It's the context around, you take what looks like data or looks like information and you give substance to it, because you're living and breathing it every day for 10, 15, 20 years.
I was about to interrupt you, and I'm so glad I didn't, because you said exactly what I was starting to say, which is, this is a little bit of a plug for our industry and a plug for real estate agents in New York who work so hard. And the fact is that data and knowledge, data and wisdom, data and experience are not the same thing. 100%. They just aren't. And look, we are no longer the keepers of information the way we once were.
We don't have the control we used to have.
Right, and buyers come in with they're savvy and they know they have a lot of information when they come in. But we are the ones who are running around all day, every day, learning about the block, the building, the boards, all of this stuff. And, why has this building is a land lease, all these things that they wouldn't necessarily know. So I just want to sort of hop in there and piggyback and dovetail exactly 100%. What you were saying.
But it's also a fine line, I think, that we have to, kind of walk on when they come with us armed with information based on these platforms that are now available to them and have been for years. And they think they have all the answers because, pictures don't always tell the story. Floor plans don't always tell the story. You don't really know what the neighborhood's all about, unless you dig in. But when you're looking at the surface on all these platforms, it looks wonderful. Let me send it to Vince and ask him if we can go see this. And when I come back and say, well, guys, I don't think this one will work for you, and here are my reasons why. If you want to see it, I'll gladly show you. Sure. But I think this is not going to work based on whatever. As you said, we walk the streets all day long. We run around all day long. We know the inventory. We know everything there should be about a neighborhood most of the time. And, do buyers receive that well? Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But again, I will tell them, if you want to see it, I will take you. And most of the time, and I'm not looking for a tap on the shoulder, but most of the time they'll say, you know what, Vince, you're right. I agree with you. This really isn't going to work for us. It doesn't really kind of fit our needs. And boy, who took these pictures? Because this apartment doesn't look anything like these pictures, which is one of my biggest pet peeves, okay? Everybody looks at pictures and thinks, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. No.
Well, there is that concept that's saying that when a buyer sees a property online, that is, in fact, the first showing.
Yeah.
And the second showing is when they come see it in person.
Right. And it's so misrepresented sometimes. It's unbelievable. All right, a few minutes left. How would you close this out based on the topic, based on the current marketplace, which is kind of like dragging in some areas? How would you close this out by way of working with buyers, making sure that they understand the neighborhood they want to purchase in, making sure they understand what they should be looking for, et cetera, before they actually pull that trigger on a lease or pull that trigger on a purchase?
I think as agents for our industry, we've got to get past the idea of quick showing, quick this, turn around a deal, let's get these people into a place that checks all the boxes. That's not what we do. We deal with people's lives and all the emotions and all the stuff that goes from their AM to the middle of the day to the evening, right? So, from a representational standpoint, I think it's really important to be able to give yourself enough time to, for example, we take people out on showings, building some time to go and have a coffee around the corner or go and sort of feel out a little bit of the neighborhood with them. And that gives you the opportunity to kind of showcase, your knowledge of that neighborhood, of the block. There's information that we get through the industry, which is really important. Oh, we know via certain outlets that this is going to happen over the next 3 years in this building or in this part of the neighborhood. So I think that's fundamental from an industry standpoint. From a client standpoint, I think it's, again, each set of clients comes with a different set of needs and a different set of reasons for potentially making this purchase. And our job is to guide them through the process, let them work through their wish list, help them articulate what's really possible, and have fun with it. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, this should be like a fun process, right? This should be something, it's a part of their life. So we can provide data, we can back up the emotion of the process with the information. And I think that's why it's an art. It's not just, go show and, we're done. That's not how it works.
100%, yeah. So, based on the article you wrote for U.S. News and World Report, and by the way, you should read all of his articles in real estate. They're really good.
Thank you.
And we talk about them every time he writes one. Did you feel like you accomplished your goal in getting the message out there that it's important before you sign on the dotted line that you understand what you're, signing up for, or, buying or renting? And what is the feedback you're getting?
I feel like we've touched upon so many different things in this conversation. So my brain is like, how do I bring it home right now? How do I solidify this, that, the other? And, yesterday I took out this family and we saw 10 apartments. That is a lot. And
a lot on one day.
For a stormy Monday.
Right. And I said to them, your brain's going to be mush by the end of the day, but we're going to summarize it and We had a hole in the schedule, which we agents don't love, but this was perfect. And we went for coffee at a very cool place within the neighborhood that they were looking. And it sort of checked a lot of different boxes. Number one, it allowed them to see who's running around in this neighborhood. And they looked around and Ethan Hawke was at 2 tables away. So this was very, very cool for them.
We're done. Signed.
Out of town people.
I'll take it.
And the place, it was this very chic place in Chelsea. I'm not going to say what it was, but they had just been renovated after decades of disrepair, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. And it enabled them to let their broker be a little bit of a tour guide. It enabled them to see, who are the locals. It also enabled us to have that conversation of, who are you in 5 years? And do these people that you're walking by on the street and that you're sitting near in this place, do these people look like, do they represent the life that you would like to be living in 5 years? And it's not like I aspire to be a rocket scientist or I aspire to be a movie star. It's I aspire to be myself in 5 years. And who is that? Because in 5 years, I'm not going to have toddlers anymore. In 5 years, I'm going to have little kids. In 5 years, I'm not going to be new to the city anymore. In 5 years, I'm going to be, a veteran. I'm not going to be in my entry-level job in 5 years. Exactly. So it can be difficult to think about that self-evolution.
Of course.
But I think that sort of finding those moments to really take each of those steps can be incredibly not just rewarding, but good.
Fundamental.
Fundamental and beneficial in the long run.
Housing is one of our major investments in life. We all know that, and it's always
and it's an investment in the future.
It's an investment in the future. It's an investment for today. It's an investment in everything, but also it's a very big mind game that we all play with it. We are so out of time. We have to go, but we're coming right back with my final thoughts. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my final thoughts. So finding the right New York City neighborhood is about more than price or convenience. It's about connection, energy, and fit. The city offers endless options, each with its own character and pace, so it's important to experience them firsthand. Walk the streets at different times, grab coffee or dinner at local spots, and talk to residents to get the real sense of the community. Check social media and neighborhood groups to see what life is really like day to day. Test your commute. Explore nearby amenities, and soak in the vibe. These small details could make a big difference in your life. When you take the time to truly test drive a neighborhood, you're not just choosing an address, you're choosing a place where you feel comfortable, inspired, and at home. The right neighborhood will support your lifestyle, your routines, and the life you want to build in this city. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And Karen Kaiser Clark says, life is change. Growth is optional. So choose wisely. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am very grateful. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.